Hey everybody, welcome into the back room. I'm Andy Ostroy. We have Michigan State Senator Mallory McMorrow with us today. We'll chat with her in just a second, but first, thanks for tuning in. We appreciate you listening, and we'd love to hear your comments. So email us at backroomandy@gmail.com and or post on our social media, and we'll read some feedback next time. And if you like the podcast, please follow or subscribe and rate and review, and you'll be notified every time we post a new episode. So let's get to our big things of the week. As usual, Donald Trump is one of our big things. No pun intended. Let's play this clip from his rally in Michigan.
I've just signed an executive order to give partial tariff rebates to any company that assembles its cars right here in the U.S. In other words, if they can't make it in time because they have to do it here, otherwise they haven't, I'm giving them a little bit of a break, right? They took in parts from all over the world. I don't want that. I want them to make their parts here. Somebody would say, oh, well, that's a change in parts. It's not. It's called a little flexibility. The guys were crying. They love it. Everything's good. But just in case we can't get everything in time, we gave them a little bit. So it's 15% of the parts, and then it's 10% of the parts. We give them a little time before we slaughter them if they don't do this. Tariffs haven't even really kicked in. The 25% on cars have. But you know what that means? That means that you're going to make the cars. We don't need the cars from outside. When they say, oh, sir, we want to send you a lot of cars. I said, we really don't want your cars. We really don't want. We want to make our own cars. That includes Canada. That includes Mexico, who have taken a tremendous amount of our business.
What the fuck is he talking about? Like, it's just like a giant word salad. It makes no sense. There's no core strategy. But what I've just sort of realized is that Donald Trump has many different voices. He has like a voice for every mood or every punctuation he wants to make. Like, so there's like, I want to sound tough, Trump. So it's like when he does that, right? I had to him. And then there's like when Trump thinks he's being smart and tries to explain shit. He's like, he goes like a little, I got to put just a little, I give him a little flexibility. Like he does that thing. And then there's like the, oh, sir, oh, that's the lying Trump. Like, you know, whatever
Wait,
you hear.
I have to correct you on one thing. Every one of those voices is the lying Trump.
That's true. No, but when he says like, oh, sir, oh, like, you know, especially, that's like a big lie. That's a big lie.
Yes.
And then there's like the seductive Trump. It's like, oh, just say, we're going to give him a little flexibility.
Before he pulls the actual boom, boom, punch.
Before he kicks you in the nuts. Oh, my God. Like, this whole tariff fiasco is just such a self-own. There's no rhyme or reason to any of it. And you listen to him talk, like, we're bringing manufacturing, we're going to get the parts, we're going to make the parts here, we get the parts, I don't like the parts being right. If he thinks cars are going to be fully manufactured and assembled here in the United States, anytime in any of our lifetimes, this man is truly delusional.
Everything he's doing tells you that nothing he's saying is honest. Because if you were genuinely concerned with getting cars back in the U.S., then why are you passing tariffs on apparel? Why are there tariffs on things that are not coming back? So obviously the tariffs have nothing to do with bringing factory jobs back, not to mention the fact that new factories are going to be so automated, they're going to have a tenth or less the number of jobs they would have had 30 years ago in his demented, addled brain.
Trump is now Scrooge. He's ruining Christmas for the little kids this week when he was asked about the impact of the tariffs.
Well, maybe the children will have $2 instead of $30, you know? And maybe the $2 will cost a couple of bucks more than they would normally. We've been ripped off by every country in the world, but China, I would say, is the leading one and the leading candidate for the chief ripper offer.
Well, you are.
Mommy, you promised me $30. You're the worst mother in the world.
Donald Trump is single-handedly turning every little girl in this country into Veruca Salt this Christmas. I mean, seriously, who the fuck gets their kids $30? First of all, that's the big question.
He does.
This shows you how clueless and tone deaf this man is, and the world that he travels in. When his supporters are like, oh, he's just like us. No, he's not, because you give your kid maybe $1 or $2. He's talking about like the kids are going to get 2 dolls as if that's a fucking problem. Right? Like that's a kid's going to be like, oh man, all I got is 2 Barbies. Like, damn, I want out of this family.
I'm going to take him at his word. You go from 30 to 2 on any Christmas item. That means that people can expect to have a 94% reduction in Christmas gifts.
Yes. See, here's the inherent contradiction in Trump. For how long has he insisted, right, that it's countries who pay the tariffs? It's like, does he understand what he just said? He's like saying, A, countries will pay the tariffs. B, but it's going to be so fucking devastating in this country around Christmas that the kids are going to lose 98% of their Christmas toys.
Aside from the fact that Barbies are not going to be made in Wichita or something like that. Like the idea that we'd want to bring back Barbie factories now. I mean, everything he says is contradictory because it's all bullshit.
Yeah.
You need something to do with all the children who aren't getting educated with the elimination of the Department of Education. And so all of this manufacturing is part of his master plan. You need little nimble fingers.
To put the heads on the dolls?
Correct.
And Chief Ripper Offer?
So good.
No wonder he said, I love the poorly educated. I mean, what language was that?
It's the language of the people, Andy.
It certainly wasn't English. Didn't he sign a fucking EO declaring English our first language? Well, he needs to start speaking it.
I think
because Chief Ripper Offer is not anything that was taught in any English class I've been to.
I'm kind of curious. Like, does he not see his Marie Antoinette-ish? Like, does he not see any of it? Like, come on, Americans, you're just going to have to suffer. And he just doesn't get it.
He's tone deaf, which remains a mystery why anybody still supports him. But they're going to find out, you know. They're going to find out when it is time to go shopping for Christmas presents and Hanukkah presents. And the shelves might be empty. And you can't even get those 2 dolls. And then the other thing that happened this week, which was kind of cool, was that there's finally some accountability on this Signalgate scandal. Look, I don't care what comes out of Trump's face, comes off of J.D. Vance's lips, or is spewed by the Trump administration about National Security Advisor Mike Waltz's termination. They can spin it any way they like. They can make it sound like a promotion. But the most important thing is that Trump is going to withdraw this nomination of Mike Waltz to be UN ambassador. And the reason is that's a Senate-confirmed position. So he has to go before Congress, and Democrats are going to re-litigate the shit out of Signalgate. And they're going to ask questions from when it started, how it started, what was your role, blah, 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 blah. And I can't fathom how Trump 2.0 wants to keep that in the news longer. And so this is why I think this was a win for Democrats. It was a win for democracy. It was a win for our national security.
Trump may very well want to test his power over the Senate and make sure that they just approve whoever he says. The other thing is that Axios is now reporting that the replacement for Waltz is going to be Stephen Miller as his national security advisor, which I don't think that's a big win for us because I almost prefer Waltz to Stephen Miller. Does it matter,
Maddie, though? I mean, are you shocked that Donald Trump is doing something outrageously?
Not in the least.
Okay. Do you think it changes the influence that Stephen Miller has right now?
It doesn't really change it much, except gives him more opportunity than he had before in terms of security clearances.
Democrats are going to have equal time to sit there and harangue this guy and drag this scandal day after day for however long that hearing takes place through the mud. And that cannot be good for Trump. It cannot be good for Waltz. And it certainly ain't going to be good for Pete Hegseth.
Yeah, I mean, I won't argue. It's not going to be good for Waltz. I don't know about Hegseth. I will say that it's quite amusing that Reuters published a photo of Waltz at the cabinet meeting the day before yesterday using Signal on his phone. That's pretty special.
Yeah, well, their defense was it's an approved platform.
Yeah, of course.
So
it's just his babysitter he had to text.
Yeah. Dear babysitter, we are invading Greenland tomorrow. The other big thing, which is an ongoing story, and this is the disappearance of Kilmar Abrego Garcia, the alleged Venezuelan gang member who was sent to the Gulag in El Salvador. And interestingly, Trump sat down with ABC's Terry Moran for an interview, and he admitted he could bring him back. I could bring him back. But why should I? He's a gang member. And so when he was pressed by Moran, and specifically about the tattoos, he's like, yeah, the tattoos. That proves he's a gang member. And Moran was like, no, that was a doctored photo. And Trump got all upset. He was defiant. And, you know, the courts continue to do the right thing here. There was a new ruling this week by a Trump-appointed U.S. District Judge, Fernando Rodriguez, in Texas, who ruled that Trump unlawfully invoked the Alien Enemies Act. And he blocked the administration from quickly deporting some alleged Venezuelan gang members down in Texas. So this ruling specifically applies only to this case with these alleged gang members who are being detained and slated to be deported also to El Salvador. And there have been other court rulings in this case before, but this is the biggest blow to Trump because it's based on the merits. And that is that Trump exceeded his authority for using a law which was intended only for when the U.S. is at war, when the U.S. has been invaded. Now, they like to argue we are invaded. It's an invasion, right? Trump even declared a national emergency. Call me crazy, but when the United States has been invaded by a foreign country or foreign terrorists, and we are at war, how the fuck is the United States president play golf every other day, right? Which kind of proves it's all bullshit, and the courts are not accepting the bullshit anymore. In another big case involving deportations, U.S. District Judge Paula Zinnis moved her discovery process forward. She had given Trump's lawyers the 1-week reprieve it had requested when she said, you got to come back here and prove to me what you're doing to quote unquote facilitate Abrego Garcia's return. That period ended this week with the Trump lawyers showing nothing. They just walked in with nothing except more intransigence and a request to stay discovery, which she denied. And she set a new deadline of next Friday to complete depositions. So that case is moving forward very quickly. And so far, the administration is nothing but bullshit. And don't forget, she also has come very close to citing them for contempt. So that's going to be really interesting. But what's most interesting to me is that we're now starting to learn that El Salvadoran President Bukele agreed to imprison only quote unquote convicted criminals, and that he wanted assurances from the Trump administration that these individuals were in fact gang members of Tren de Aragua. And this is a big story in the New York Times this week, and it's showing that this guy, the self-proclaimed coolest dictator in the world, actually gives more of a shit about our Constitution and our rule of law and due process than the current president and the administration. And he's pissed. He was played. When he sat in the Oval Office, he had been played. And so that's going to be interesting to see how that plays out. So I think in the end, it just seems like it's going to get resolved the right way. Trump will get Abrego Garcia back here. Others will not be deported. And this invoking of the Alien Enemies Act is going to be dead, even if it makes its way to the Supreme Court. Supreme Court, and this is a very important distinction. Okay, some people might say, like, oh, didn't the Supreme Court rule on this a few weeks ago? They did. They just said he can do it. They didn't argue on the merits of the case. They said he can do it. However, if he does it, when he does it, he has to provide due process to those involved. They have to go through a judicial system. This government has to prove their guilt. and then they can be deported. So even if it gets to the Supreme Court, he's still going to lose on this issue, as he should.
I hope so. I'm not sure. This court is not normal, but we hope we have 5 judges that are...
There will be 7. I guarantee you there will be 7. That's my bet. We'll add that. How many bets we got going on now? Too many to count.
7. So I'm going to have to search the transcript later when you're wrong.
All right. I was right on Mike Waltz. I said someone's going to get fired, and X is going to be next.
He's getting promoted.
He is going.
Well, that one I remember. Tune in, people. May 24th to see if Andy is wrong.
All right, let's get to our winners and losers.
My winner, Fernando Rodriguez Jr., a Trump-appointed judge, permanently barred the Trump administration from invoking the Alien Enemies Act to deport Venezuelans. My loser, all the students, teachers, families, past and present and future, due to the cancellation of $1 billion in grants for the student mental health stemming from a bipartisan law around gun violence.
My winners and losers are both related to the budget blueprint that Trump just proposed to Congress. If this passes, the big winner will be billionaires and defense contractors, and the big losers will be pretty much everybody else, especially public health, and all government agencies, because it essentially will legislate what DOJ has done without any legislation.
My loser, National Security Advisor Mike Waltz, who gave up his House seat to join Trump 2.0, only to be fired after just 9.2 Scaramucci's over the Signalgate debacle. My winner, also Judge Fernando Rodriguez, for his powerful ruling regarding Trump's unconstitutional use of the Alien Enemies Act. And that gets us to our rant. You guys ready for some more optimistic Andy?
Yeah.
All right, folks. It's time for a reality check. I know there's a lot of my fellow libtards out there on the roof right now, ready to jump. Oh my God, woe is me. The sky is falling. We're all screwed. It's the end of the world as we know it. Democracy is dying. We're all going to be living in a dictatorship. Okay. Well, I'm here to tell you that the opposite is happening. To paraphrase Mark Twain, the reports of democracy's death are greatly exaggerated. Yeah, it's ugly out there, and it's scary. And Trump is testing our judicial system like never before in this nation's history. This as he shatters every norm and every boundary and attempts to break every institution we've operated under for 250 years. But just because there are ugly, bloody battles doesn't mean we aren't going to win the war. And we are indeed winning the war. We are seeing a resistance movement in this country that is growing in fervor and momentum. It includes the courts, which continue in case after case after case to serve as the critical check on Trump's worst autocratic behavior and unconstitutional executive orders. It includes the media, which is increasingly holding Trump accountable for his lies and gaslighting. It includes law firms, which are increasingly pushing back on Trump's attacks. A case in point is a new law firm that's been formed by former partners of firms that have capitulated. This new firm is taking on clients, including Miles Taylor, who have been targeted for retribution by Trump 2.0. It includes universities like Harvard and hundreds of others who are now uniting to fight Trump's assault on their independence. And it includes the electorate, which has handed Trump the lowest polling in history for a president in his first 100 days. America is rejecting dictatorship. It's rejecting cruelty. It's rejecting every single damn thing that Donald Trump stands for right now. And it's only 100 days in. Imagine where this resistance movement will be in 6 months or a year, or right before the November 26 midterms. This is a movement that is targeting not only the House, but the Senate and the presidency as well. And if Trump continues to exhaust the American public with his corruption, his assault on due process and the rule of law, and his shredding of the economy, he will achieve his unwitting goal of going down in history as the worst president ever, and will cause his party to suffer greatly in the next elections. Lastly, this week we've seen the Trump turnover playbook kick in with the firing of Mike Waltz. Trust me, there's going to be plenty more cabinet members and aides whose heads are going to roll down Pennsylvania Avenue soon. As I predicted weeks ago, this now basically includes Elon Musk as well, who, after a colossal Doge failure, clearly has been marginalized and will soon be gone altogether. And as I've said for months now, Trump 2.0 is the gang that can't shoot straight. They continue to prove me right. So, my fellow libtards, get off the roof, take a deep breath, and focus on what matters. Stay informed, stay engaged, and keep resisting and fighting. Capitulation never ends in victory, but resistance and fighting does. All right, let's get to Michigan State Senator Mallory McMorrow. After Googling how to run for office in the wake of the 2016 election, she took on an incumbent Republican state senator and won, moving the seat 20 percentage points. When a right-wing state senator baselessly called her a quote-unquote groomer, she took to the floor in a now viral speech and declared, quote, "We will not let hate win." New York Magazine called the speech remarkable. James Carville said it was enormously effective. The Atlantic wrote that it was stunning. After her viral speech, Mallory helped flip control of the Michigan Senate for the first time in 40 years, becoming the first woman Senate Majority Whip in state history. She has worked to strengthen unions and raise wages, eliminate the retirement tax on seniors, expand civil rights, repeal the state's 1931 abortion ban, tackle gun violence, expand affordable housing, and feed kids in school. And she recently released her first book, Hate Won't Win. Senator, welcome into the back room.
I'm so happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
It's a real honor to have you here. I've been wanting to talk with you for a long time. I'm a big fan of what you've been doing. But before we get into the book and your campaign, I just have to, as a 25-year New York Knicks season ticket holder, offer my condolences on the Pistons. And I say that with the utmost arrogance of the New York sports fan you would expect.
Thank you. Well, I mean, leading with condolences and not just rubbing salt in the wound is much appreciated.
I have a softer side. So I want to start out with the book. It's called Hate Won't Win. It's sort of a sequel to the incredible viral speech you gave on the Michigan Senate floor back in April of 2022 in response to being accused of being a, quote, groomer by a Republican senator. I want to play a little bit of that clip because I think it's important for my audience to hear it, and then we'll talk about it.
I want every child in this state to feel seen, heard, and supported, not marginalized and targeted because they are not straight, white, and Christian. We cannot let hateful people tell you otherwise, to scapegoat and deflect from the fact that they are not doing anything to fix the real issues that impact people's lives. And I know that hate will only win if people like me stand by and let it happen. So I want to be very clear right now. Call me whatever you want. I hope you brought in a few dollars. I hope it made you sleep good last night. I know who I am. I know what faith and service means and what it calls for in this moment. We will not let hate win.
So powerful. Tell us how that moment helped inspire the book.
It was a really dark moment that turned into something I can never express my gratitude for. So to paint a picture, I mean, I woke up one morning to the news that a colleague of mine had sent out a fundraising email accusing me by name of wanting to groom and sexualize kindergartners and wanting 8-year-olds to believe they were responsible for slavery. To be very clear, this wasn't my opponent. She lived in a completely different part of the state, but just wanted to make me a target. And I recognized throughout the course of the day that, you know, I wasn't actually the one under the attack, but I was a warning shot. It was a way to say that if you dare to stand up for trans kids, that you're not one of us, you're one of them. And I had visited a high school in my district that day after dealing with media calls and really just letting it sink in that I was going to have to defend myself against accusations that, I mean, let's call grooming what it is, that I was a child molester, which is horrifying. And there were high school students, and one of them said, "Why are there all these bills that are targeting LGBTQ kids?" And she said very honestly, she's like, "We don't care. We don't care how our friends identify, what they look like. It's just such a non-issue, and we can't understand why politicians and adults are so obsessed with this. And she finally said to me, I'm queer. Why does it feel like my state hates people like me? And that stuck with me all night, where, I'm fine at the end of the day. I felt horrible, but I was fine. She was not. And it really saw all of these headlines and all the news coverage, even if these bills didn't have a chance of passing, that it hurts. It really hurts to feel like you don't have a place in your own community and in your state. So I wrote this speech. Originally, I had called out the hypocrisy on the other side of the aisle. This was in a moment where our Republican Speaker of the House at the time, Lee Chatfield, had just been accused by his sister-in-law of grooming and raping her starting when she was 15. So I wrote about that in the speech. But I took it all out, recognizing that if I made it about Republicans versus Democrats, that nobody would care and nobody would listen. So instead, I wrote about myself and wanted to take my own identity back. And I said very intentionally that I am a straight, white, Christian, married suburban mom who knows that hate wins when people like me let it happen. This was in the midst of the rise of groups like Moms for Liberty, and I really wanted to talk to other moms in my position who are part of, the majority, to say, this is on us. We have a choice to make. And I genuinely thought this is going to be the last speech I ever give. I was in a place where I had been redistricted into a Democratic district out of the Republican district that I had represented. I was facing a Democratic primary. I hadn't been able to pass a single bill because the Republican majority had ostracized me and wanted to paint me as ineffective. So I was ready to quit, feeling like I had failed and I had let everybody down who had supported getting me into office in the first place. So I sort of decided if I'm going to go down, I might as well go down swinging. And then I put this speech up online, and within 24 hours, tens of millions of people saw it. And for months on end, I mean, we're having this conversation 3 years later, and I still have people write to me and tell me how much the speech meant, or that they watch it sometimes when they're feeling down. People wrote letters to me with their life story, whether they were Republican, Democratic, religious, not religious, about how much this meant. And it pulled me back into this work. And the book is the result of me traveling the country. I was in more than a dozen states throughout 2022. In the wake of the speech, I was fundraising for a PAC that I had started to support other state Senate candidates. And people, no matter where I was, would say, I want to do something, but I'm so overwhelmed and I have no idea where to start. So that's what the book is. It is half memoir, hopefully to show people that I was not special in any way. I Googled how to run for office. But the second half is what I'm really excited about. It's a guide. It is a step-by-step guide for anybody to find their motivation, to learn how to tell a compelling story, how to interface with elected officials and which ones, so that you can do it too. Because the only way we fight back against this politics of hate and ugliness is if we do it together.
And what is the best way people can take action?
There is no best way. And I think that's really frustrating for people. People want, like, what is the one thing that I can do? But in this moment, the best piece of advice I can give people is find your one issue, the thing that really motivates you, that you have a personal connection to, and use that as your anchor. Because the strategy, I think, of Donald Trump and this administration is to overwhelm us with so much. I mean, whether it's executive orders or news or press conferences or videos they put out on social media, they're just so beyond the pale. The strategy is to overwhelm you so you shut down and you don't do anything. But if you pick your one issue, and it can take time to figure out what that is, and you decide, I'm going to pay attention to this one issue, and that is where I'm going to focus my advocacy. If you trust that everybody else is going to find their one issue, then we're going to be okay. And you will be able to sustain staying engaged and paying attention to what politicians are doing and not feeling like you have to respond or send an email or make a phone call on every single thing that happens, because you can't. I mean, burnout is real. You got to take care of yourself, because this is about building a relationship with your community and your state and your government. Not, I always say activism and advocacy is a relationship. It's not an action.
You brought up the exhaustion of Trump 2.0. And even though I don't personally share this sentiment, what do you say to the folks who say, sure as hell feels like hate is winning?
This is a call to action, intentionally. It is a choice that we get to make. Hate is certainly having a moment. You can look at the results of the 2024 election and feel that way and feel rightfully. But Trump is not impenetrable. We've seen already that the example that I like to point to is when they announced the federal funding freeze on Head Start programs, for example, that when people showed up and the doors were locked and their Head Start programs were closed, the amount of pressure that was felt very suddenly from around the country forced them to rescind that order not even 48 hours later. So that to me shows we still have a lot of power. We are in a moment right now, and we're having this conversation that the Republican majority in Congress has delayed their budget vote on their markup that would have slashed Medicare, Medicaid funding because of the pressure of phone calls and town halls. So what we are doing is working. And you just have to kind of build yourself up and recognize we have to be in it for the long haul. But it's on us. I mean, this is a democracy. The beautiful thing about a democracy is that it is made up of people like us. We can participate, we can shape it, we can write a new future. And I think that Donald Trump is going to leave a lot of rubble behind. Truly, it's going to get worse before it gets better. But that gives us an opportunity to build something new.
Yeah, one of the reasons why I really wanted to talk with you, because I remember watching your speech, and it moved me to tears, because we are so lacking in this country of enough people who are standing up and willing to fight. And after the election 24, people were so despondent, and so many people were throwing in the towel. And I think your message is a really important one, and that is that battles could be really bloody, really ugly, but you can win the war. And so we all have to just stay focused, stay engaged, and fight to win that war. Is that the biggest takeaway you want people to have from your book?
Absolutely. And I will never say it's all going to be okay in a way to just assuage people's fears, because I'll be the first to say, I don't know. And anybody who tells you for sure that they know is lying. But I do know that we have been through a lot worse in this country. We went through civil war. And, we're not there yet, but I know that we've come back from really ugly, violent things in our past, because we do have a system of government that allows us to participate. But it's on us to decide to participate and decide to participate regularly. And I do believe this is a moment where people are looking for elected leaders who fight and who are going to fight for a future, who can articulate what that future is. And, this is not a time for people who are passive and who are just holding on to their seats and sticking their heads in the sand and saying, well, I'm just going to wait until it blows over. Because it won't, unless we do that work to get to what's next and get out of this really ugly moment.
Yeah, people just need to stay engaged no matter how ugly it looks. I mean, does it feel like Donald Trump and hate are really winning? Like, they're not winning. Hate is not winning. This country, Americans are rejecting all of it, aren't they?
They are. There's a lot of bluster. But, when you see the first month of this presidency, I was really worried, because it felt like people were despondent and not showing up and not engaging. That has changed. And when I do town halls or coffee hours, typically I'm a state senator now. I get 5 or 10 people who come out regularly to these things. That's not what's happening now. I am getting hundreds of people swarming these events. And what feels very different is that people, when they come, they're not just demanding to know what I'm going to do. They want to know what they can do. So they're asking questions about, who do I call? What's the best way to engage? Do emails really work? What do I do if nobody's answering the phone? Do protests work? People are asking all of these very thoughtful questions, which I know that it might sound trite, but I feel really hopeful right now. Mm-hmm. People are engaged. They're plugged in. And I do think that Donald Trump and this brand of hate-filled politics is losing. You can only run in a world of chaos for so long until people get tired of it and they want something different.
Well, I'm known as Optimistic Andy around here, so I'm with you 100%. So now you're running for the open U.S. Senate seat vacated by Gary Peters, who's retiring. You alluded to the fact that we as Democrats have a leadership problem. You have said that if you're elected, you're not going to support Chuck Schumer as minority leader when their vote comes up in January of 27. How important do you think this issue of leadership is right now in the party? And the second part of the question is, what do you think of what DNC Vice Chair David Hogg has suggested about injecting $20 million to primary older and less effective Democratic politicians in safe districts?
Yeah. So first of all, I want to be very clear. This is not about age. It's about approach. And when I made my comments about Senator Schumer, to be very clear, it's not about one vote. It's not about the continuing resolution. And it's not even really a swipe at him, but it is an acknowledgement that many of our current leaders in the party came up and served in a very different time. After my speech went viral in 2022, I got a call from President Biden, and he and I spoke for a good long time. And he even acknowledged, and it felt like an acknowledgement almost for the first time. He said to me, Mallory, I have never seen things this bad. And this is a man who always believed that you can work across the aisle, that there are just some red lines that you do not cross, that, there are American values that unite us that's greater than any division. And I think there was a recognition in the conversation with me that maybe that's not true anymore. And so as I think of the leadership that's necessary to get us out of this moment, the leaders who came up in 2018, the year that, I ran for office for the first time, Jocelyn Benson was running for Secretary of State, who I know you know well, Alyssa Slotkin ran for Congress for the first time. None of us were put up by the party. We all saw an issue and saw a moment and raised our hands and said, I'm going to try to fix it. And I think that, a party is made up of people and we're only as good as the people who are in it, but that it's not going to come from the party. It's going to come from individual campaigns and individual people who show a different way forward. And that's what I'm running on. I came up in the era of Donald Trump in government and politics. I recognize that this is not the traditional Republican Party. I beat a Republican incumbent in a Republican district who had won by 16 points the cycle before. I beat him by 4 points. We swung the district 20 points, really on this message that this is a different time, and appealing to people who may have voted for somebody like Mitt Romney, but who recognize like this brand is a MAGA party. It's not a Republican Party, and that's not who I am. So I think we need leaders who understand the difference and who also know how to use modern tools of communication, digital media, social media, to engage with voters in real time so that they are treated like part of the team and not as a number. I can't tell you the number of people, and I feel this way too, who feel like the Democratic Party treats us as expendable, that you get another text asking for $5 and all your leaders are doing is hosting a press conference in front of the Capitol in Washington and saying, we're fighting for you, or giving interviews and saying, well, their polls are going down and we'll just get them in the midterms. Well, that's a year and a half away. What are we doing every day between now and then? People want to be part of the solution. And that's where my comments are, is that we need somebody who gets that. And I came at this work from the private sector where leadership turnover was regular. People just didn't hold on to their CEO positions endlessly. turnover is healthy and good. And I think Michigan now provides a great example where 2 cycles in a row between Senator Stabenow and Senator Peters have recognized that part of leadership is also knowing when it's time to step back and retire. Frankly, selfishly, I want to retire before I'm 70 years old, and bring the next generation up. Now, to answer your second question, I also think the role of the party has a very different role. Its role is for infrastructure and support and to support the state parties. It does not set the tone. And I think people really need to differentiate what the party is for. And as I think of what David Hogg is trying to do, I'm in a primary right now. I think primaries are healthy. But I don't think that is the role of the party to do that. And I just worry, $20 million could go so far in state legislatures, in races like my first race, where these are races that are won by thousands of dollars, not millions of dollars. And rather than trying to leverage, your party position to take out incumbent Democrats, build the bench of great people who just need a little bit of help and a little bit of infrastructure. That is something that Republicans did for decades that we have not done, that I think would be much more effective than what he's trying to do. And, Ken Martin, who's the chair of the DNC, said he has no issue with what David's trying to do, but you can't do both. Either you run your PAC, and that's your goal of running primaries, or you're a DNC officer, but you can't do both.
Right. So your state is the auto capital of the world. GM, for example, this week lowered its profit estimates for the year. How significantly will Trump's auto tariffs impact this critical industry in your state?
So Michigan is the canary in the coal mine. And when we have this conversation, I don't want anybody listening in any other state to say, ooh, this is going to hurt Michigan and it's not going to hurt us. Michigan's unemployment rate has spiked, the second highest in the country. We have 5.5% unemployment right now. So even though jobs numbers that came out today look a little more optimistic, I would warn everybody, it is coming for you. We have seen layoffs and hiring freezes across the board because of the tariffs. Not only within the automotive industry, Stellantis laid off 900 workers. We saw layoffs at Ford and GM, but we've also seen it at suppliers and small business owners. There's a small business owner in my district who makes a product called the Free Write. It's a little typewriter that's not connected to the internet if you want distraction-free typing. He's an innovator and an entrepreneur, and he said, this is going to crush us. We are going to have to pass the costs on to consumers. What we've seen, GameStop just put out reports on the price increases to game consoles that are coming out. It's not just like $5 or $10 more expensive. It's $100 or $150 more expensive. It is going to crush people. And then this small business owner told me, we don't know if we can hire. This completely screws up our business plan for the entire year. So I would expect that the impact that we are seeing in Michigan is going to be the delayed impact that we see everywhere else as these tariffs start to go into effect. There was a letter issued by the longshoremen in Long Beach, the last ship of shipping containers before the tariffs has arrived, and now the docks are empty. I mean, just think about that. People are not importing goods the way that they were. And, there's going to be a delayed impact where once we get a few weeks or months down the line and you see the shelves are empty at your store, you're going to wonder why. And that means job loss. That means economic loss. It's going to be devastating not only for Michigan, but for everybody.
Yeah. Well, Trump came to your state this week, held a rally. It was full of his usual bluster and lies and gaslighting. Your state's governor, Gretchen Whitmer, took some heat from some on the left for attending that rally, which touted the Air National Guard base project she lobbied for and succeeded in getting through. I personally support what she did, and I'm curious to know what your thinking on that is.
Yeah, I do too. I don't envy the position that the governor is in. We have seen Donald Trump take out personal vengeance and retribution on other governors who stand up to him. Governor Mills stood up to him in a meeting, and now he's cutting off funding for her state. So as I think about it, Governor Whitmer has built up a reputation for standing up to Trump and leading on strong democratic and progressive values on reproductive rights, on women's rights. But she also has to lead the state. And, if she were to stand up for him or stand up against him, sure, she would get some flowers from the Democratic Party for standing strong. But we wouldn't have gotten the new mission at Selfridge. That's $800 million in economic impact. That is the livelihoods of servicemen and women and their jobs in Macomb and all across the state. At the end of the day, she has to think through, what are my values as a person, but also what is my role? And I think really carefully calculating, she can't do things that are going to unintentionally hurt the residents of Michigan. So, she did the right thing. And if you listen to her at the event, she takes to the mic and she says, I am very grateful for the announcement today. She stops short of saying, I am very grateful for Donald Trump. She said, I'm grateful for the announcement, but she did what she had to do. She recognizes this is a man who operates in flattery and transactions, and she got what she needed for Michigan. And I think she did the right thing.
Yeah. I mean, I went on Joe Walsh's podcast yesterday specifically to discuss this subject only. And my thinking was what you just said. When you want something out of Trump, you play him like a fiddle because of the ego. You get what you need. And her job is to get her constituents what they need. My last question, and this may be a tough question to answer, but, Michigan is such a great example of elevating women's voices. 3 out of the 4 of the state's top offices are held by women. In an era where it's still so challenging for women to hold senior leadership positions, to what do you attribute this success of your state's female candidates?
It's a really hard question to answer. I think Debbie Stabenow did a lot to break barriers and help women in the structure of the party. But I also think a lot of it was accidental. There was a part of my district in 2018 where you could vote a straight woman ticket from U.S. Senate to governor to Congress to Secretary of State to Attorney General, all the way down to county commission and local office. It's incredible. And I just count myself very grateful to be a part of this era as a woman in office in Michigan, because what it allows us to do is we can each be ourselves. I have a very different personality than the governor, than the attorney general, than Alyssa Slotkin, than Jocelyn, and we get to complement each other. And I don't feel the pressure that, as I talk to women in office around the country, I think too many women feel the pressure of having to be everything to every woman, because you're not only the representative of your district, but you are representing women as a gender. And there's a lot of freedom in that, to just have a personality and be unafraid to be authentically you. I'm a mom of a 4-year-old. I talk much more candidly about that. And I love sports, and I used to be a car designer, and I can lean into who I am and not feel like I'm carrying the weight of representation on my shoulders. And it's just very freeing. And I think that's going to lead to a lot more women running for office in Michigan without that pressure on us.
Yeah. I'm going to take the liberty of quickly answering my own question. I'm going to say that your state just has a group of badass women who are really unique, really smart, really focused, and have done the right thing as candidates. And I think that's why they have been elected. That's why you've been elected. And I think that's why you're going to be the next U.S. Senator from Michigan. Mallory, congrats again on the book. It's Hate Won't Win. I wish you the best with the campaign, and I hope you'll come back and chat with us again.
Thank you very much. And I hope listeners, if they're interested in the campaign, check us out at McMorrowforMichigan.com.
There you go.
Thanks.
Take care. All right, we're going to take another call from our good buddy, Colton Blue. Colton, welcome back into the back room.
Thanks for having me.
So the big news this week, first quarter, GDP contracted. First time in 5 years that we had a negative number. And people are fearing the recession. And Donald Trump, when he was asked about it, he blamed Biden. It is May. Biden left January 20th. What do you got to say about that?
Well, because it is Biden. Because this whole thing is happening because of the Biden and the Chinese. The Chinese and Biden have been working together for a few years now. And see, the markets over there happen overnight while we're asleep here. And so they can do whatever they want to manipulate it. So by the time we wake up, it could just be all screwed up.
You know that makes absolutely no sense, don't you?
No, of course it makes sense. It's amazing what you don't see when it's right in front of you. But it was all because of Biden working with the Chinese.
Donald Trump said second quarter is probably going to be the same, and that's going to be Biden too. Now, if the second quarter GDP and the stock market during that period go up, we both know Donald Trump is going to take credit for that. So now that if it goes up, we got to give credit to Biden. Are you ready to give credit to Joe Biden if we have a strong second quarter?
Well, I don't know what ChatGPT does with it, but I know that with the AI
No, not
that they can make it,
ChatGPT.
they can do all sorts of stuff.
No. It's GDP, gross domestic product.
It's going to take another 3 months or so for these tariffs to work and make the Chinese back off. So he's just preparing us for what's coming. He's fighting the Chinese. He's doing what needed to be done for years, and he's standing up to them, and he's putting them back in their place. You know, Joe Biden's behind the scenes scheming and working with him.
You guys relentlessly attacked Joe Biden as being an old, feeble, senile old man. And now you're telling me that 4 months into Trump's presidency, Joe Biden is so smart that he's actually still pulling all the strings?
Well, talking about pulling strings, I mean, Joe Biden's basically, he's the dummy sitting on Hunter's lap. And Hunter's got his hand up his back, making him look like he's doing stuff, and Hunter's behind the scenes really doing it. Because he was working with the Chinese too. It's the both of them.
Is there ever going to be a point where you will blame anything bad that's happening in this country on Donald Trump?
Well, no, because the bad thing's been happening in this country for a long time. And he stepped up and said, I'm going to put a stop to it. We're going to have to do some drastic things. It might hurt for a little bit, but we're going to put this country back on its feet. And I'm sitting back watching it and loving it.
Colton, we're going to leave it on that note. We'll chat with you next time.
All right. Thank you. Bye-bye.
All right. That was my buddy Nathan Dean out in L.A. We'll chat with Nathan and Colton again soon. This episode of The Back Room was edited and produced by me, Andy Ostroy. It was co-edited and co-produced by Maddie Rosenberg and co-produced by Jen Hammoud. Our theme song was composed by Andrew Hollander, and our logo was designed by Cricket Langell. And special thanks to Patricia Wind. Please take a moment to rate and review the podcast, and also follow or subscribe. Until next time, keep your eyes on Washington, Hollywood, and your own backyards, and have a great week.